Why?
Humans here spent many centuries trying to answer that question. But ultimately, the limits of their own rationality made it impossible.
Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'll be talking about episode 7 of Raised by Wolves season 2. Feeding is the penultimate episode of the sophomore season, and it set up a big showdown between Mother and her biosynthetic hybrid offspring, who got a little wild for the fruit from the Tree of Knowledge. The former tree now, I suppose, which was also the former character Sue. There is some weirdness going on. It turns out that if you put the tree and the serpent together, then, well, stuff happens. We've come to expect the weirdness. If you're still here, that's at least probably part of the reason. But we also did get the bonus of some pretty fascinating clues about the origins of things from Grandmother. I will be getting into that and everything else that happened and what it might all mean for the finale right after this quick spoiler warning. If you haven't watched Raised by Wolves Season 2 Episode 7 yet, then this video won't be for you. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. The episode opens with Paul showing up at the collective with the intention of feeding everyone the fruit from the tree. I couldn't tell for sure if he was nervous about the plan or if he was experiencing side effects from eating it himself. When asked what it is, he says it's new fruit from Sector 7 that's been tested, and the colonists all start eating it, saying that it tastes good, which it must, because they're not starving or anything, and they all seem to be grabbing it and taking it, except for Campion, who looks at it but doesn't eat it. Paul kind of covers his ears when he's walking away, and when he goes back to talk to Marcus and ask if anything's happened yet, Marcus says no, and that nothing happened to them when they ate the fruit either. Paul believes that's because they were already believers. In contrast, he expects the fruit to convert the colonists so that they'll rise up against Mother, and then as a reward they'll get Sue back from Soul. I doubt we'll see anything like that happen, and the jury is still out on whether this will have any effect on humans. Marcus did have an experience, as you would when you ingest fruit that could be the fulfillment of a prophecy where you become the king, and that also came from a tree that is made from your partner, who you realize on some level is still inside it. But beyond that, who knows right now? And we do see Mother fly to the source, where she touches the tree and she can sense right away that it's Sue, and she says, "Why did you listen to it? Why did you listen to the voice?" I assume that part of the reason why she understands that it's Sue is because she looked at the card, which Lucius said was a warning, but there's no indication if there was more about eating the fruit or about what's going to happen later. We might find out in relation to Vita, because when Mother comes back to the colony, she sees that everyone is eating it, including her. She has Holly take her to the med lab and grabs the rest of the fruit. Then she goes to check on number 7, who is screaming in the cage. It's actually injured itself from trying to break free. It sees the fruit, and as Mother has the realization that there's some kind of connection, it smashes the door down and eats the entire crate and then flies away. By this time, Paul and Marcus have returned to the tree, and Paul is starting to lose hope. He wonders what they did wrong. Marcus tells him that he didn't do anything wrong, that maybe it's all his fault. He wanted so badly for Soul to be the answer, the way out of the darkness, and now he finds himself wondering that maybe Soul is the darkness. Maybe this entity doesn't care about them at all. A little while later, Paul's laying under the tree and he starts to hear something coming through on the radio. It turns out that Sue has figured out a way to transmit her voice, and she's saying "burn me" over and over again. Then we see the tree straighten up, and as that happens, they hear the serpent, who sounds different now, and it's on its way. Marcus tries to catch the tree on fire, but number 7 gets there at the same time and eats the entire tree, like the whole thing. Then it instantly transforms with something that looks like tentacles coming out of his body. Mother arrives in full necromancer mode and tries to kill it with a scream, but it only leaves her body briefly before being pulled right back into her lungs. And on top of having a new look, number 7 has upgraded his scream as well, and it hits Mother, who is knocked head over heels as she drops to the ground deactivated. Paul and Marcus collect her and put her in a tank. She comes back online while they're on their way back to the tarantula, and Marcus wants to know why she didn't kill the serpent. Here she finally explains that it's actually her child, and that her caregiver program prevents her from harming it. She believes she needs to be reprogrammed, and tells them that Grandmother might be able to do it. And Marcus is all in for destroying it, but Mother still looks somewhat torn, even though she knows she has to. Later on the scopes, they see number 7 approach a different tank and destroy it completely. Then it takes off towards the shore, and you see that Mother realizes there's nothing she can do to help her family. Father had taken the kids to the shore to look for Tempest's baby. They tried to use a drone to search underwater, and that brought them back in contact with Vrille. She's been hiding out with repair plastic covering her cut-up face, and Holly and Hunter are rightly afraid of her. Campion finds out she killed the Mithraic, and she tells him it was delayed self-defense. Afraid that she's malfunctioning, Father asks her to come to the tarantula and submit to a systems check, but that never happens because she tells Tempest she knows where the baby is. She thinks the sea creature has it in a cave because she heard it crying there. When Tempest hears this, she insists that they have to check to see if she's lying or not. And we see Father give Hunter a rifle as they're getting ready to go. Later, while they're walking, Hunter's new headless helper android is having a problem and needs repairs, and while he's fixing it, Father asks him about his plans to move out on his own. He uses that as the chance to lay into Father, telling him that he's never around anymore and all the problems with the kids could have been avoided, saying Campion's crushing on a murder machine, Tempest's baby's gone. He could have steered them right if he wasn't so distracted with his project. Father tells him the technology grandmother represents will benefit them all in profound ways. Campion and Vrille talk about what happened, and you get the idea that she's really trying to prove herself so that she doesn't get left behind or have a repeat of being deactivated like what happened with Decima. He wants to know if what happened had anything to do with his escape, which of course it did, but she tells him not to think that. She's afraid that he won't want her around if that's the case. They do eventually reach the cave where Vrille heard the crying, and Tempest runs right in and finds a dead baby creature with no sign of her child or the mother. Even though it wasn't the right baby, Vrille asks if she proved herself useful. Everyone except for Campion wants her to be shut down. While Father tries to explain just how dangerous she might be to him, Vrille gets scared by Hunter and runs away. Campion goes chasing after her, and number 7 arrives and lets off a scream. He's able to hide behind some rocks, but Father is disabled again, and Campion finds Vrille in a tank where her systems are pretty fried. Hunter brings Father back, and he starts to tell them about number 7 until he starts hearing a sound. They realize that it's the baby crying in the cave, and when they go inside, they find the mother creature nursing it. Father plans to shoot it in the head, and then have Tempest and Hunter run in and grab the child. Tempest ends up stopping him though because she thinks the baby has bonded with the creature. She looks at that and thinks, hey, maybe this is what was supposed to happen. By now, the child thinks it's her mother. Tempest sees this as her way out of an uncomfortable situation, and she tries to leave the cave. But Hunter goes back in and shoots the creature anyway and picks up the baby, and when he tries to give it to Tempest, she won't take it. She just looks at him and then turns to walk away. Back at the tarantula, Mother gets the soldiers to stand down for Marcus, who they've been looking for as a terrorist, and Mother goes to see Grandmother. After she powers her back up, she shows her the metal card and asks her if she was built by the same ancient humans that made all these cards they've been seeing all over the planet. Grandmother says yes, and she calls them the technocrats and says that they fought against the believers in the war. Of course, we're thinking the war is what destroyed Kepler or sent it on its way to being destroyed. They built androids like her and they named them shepherds. She tells Mother that ensuring the everlasting life of human beings is her priority. Mother tells her that believers of today have used a biotech tree to weaponize a serpent, and it is kind of funny in a way that this is a sentence that doesn't raise any eyebrows. Grandmother just tells her that this is going to try to destroy the planet because that's what the entity wants. The entity referring to what we think is the voice of Soul. When Mother asks why, she says that humans on Kepler spent many centuries trying to answer that question, but ultimately the limits of their own rationality made it impossible. So the voice wants destruction, but no one actually knows why. Mother explained how the entity manipulated her and that the result was the child child, the serpent, but she says it seems that its jealousy over its brother is guiding it more than a desire to destroy the planet. This indicates to grandmother that it has emotions, and mother says she gave birth to it, so it likely does. And she explains the caregiving program issue that she can't destroy it. Grandmother offers that maybe her veil could be transplanted. It could help to null her caregiving impulses because it's a sensory filter. And she explains that her and the other shepherds were given those because it helps them to make the best decisions for humanity. Mother asks if it'll be difficult to remove it, and grandmother says no more difficult than it will be for you to wear it. So there's a lot going on in this conversation, and we will come back to that at the end. The last thing that happens is that after figuring out that number 7 came from Mother, Campion decides to try to lead it away from the other colonists. He takes off with Vrille. As they're walking, she sort of collapses and then picks up a rock from the ground. She starts to carve characters into the side of a fallen tree. She tells Campion her spider column is fractured and that's going to total her. She'll be going offline permanently in 4 or 5 minutes. She's scratching or writing frantically and explains that the first thing Decima had her do was download the real Vrille's diaries to make it easy to mimic her. She's writing them out in an effort to preserve them, but as viewers, we can't decipher what the text says. Earlier in the tank, she explained that when the real Vrille found out Decima was profiting off weapons that were destroying the Earth's atmosphere, she punished her by destroying herself. She committed suicide, which led to a moment where Campion told her he could sense that she had a soul. Now she says it's important that her thoughts are preserved, and we see her shut down abruptly. Campion holds her body as he hears a warning that it will become radioactive shortly, and the episode ends as number 7 flies overhead. So we did get some answers from grandmother, and they seem to line up with the idea that she was created to protect humans, as opposed to Mother, who was built to kill them. Of course, Mother has been reprogrammed, and there's no way to know for sure if grandmother is telling the truth or hasn't been reprogrammed herself. She was quick to offer up her veil, and also the first question she asked was why Father wasn't wearing his. This makes me think that Mother's wearing it might solve the problem that number 7 has become, but might create some new problems at the same time. The way that number 7 transformed after eating the tree makes it seem like it will have to be destroyed. In the end, it may turn out it was just part of a complicated plan to become a weapon that would be used to destroy the planet. From what we've seen so far, that seems to track, but not everything that came from the voice is on the same level. Like, why did the voice command Otho to be fruitful with Tempest? That doesn't seem necessary if destroying the planet is the end game. Is the sea creature unrelated to that and just trying to be a mother? Father did see the image of it in grandmother's memory. What is even going on with that? She lost her natural child. That was the one that we saw in the cave, and so she just happened upon a chance for a replacement. That part of the story and the nanobot tooth cave dweller encounter are still pretty unclear as far as what I can tell, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that all of this will be connected somehow. With Vrille's demise, I'm guessing what she wrote down will be important since it relates to humans being willing participants in their own destruction, but we'll have to wait until we get a translation. That's also a little bit curious because I thought that the Mithraics had the moral high ground in what happened on Earth, but not terribly surprising because they would think that they had the moral high ground either way. I mean, the character will have an influence on Campion, but right now that all feels like it's taking a backseat to the showdown between Mother and number 7 and the potential consequences of the deal she made with grandmother. Having Mother being desperate enough to need to try grandmother's plan worked well. Will the veil cut her off from the things that make her mother? Is it something that Soul or the technocrats themselves created? And what is this technology that exists inside grandmother that would be in the same place as Mother's weapon system that they can't understand the function of? I'm curious to learn more about the technocrats and what happened to them. 1,000,000 years is a long time, It seems like there's something missing in the idea that the veil was a tool to keep the androids from bonding or becoming attached to humans, and that their priority is to ensure the everlasting life of human beings. Marcus and Paul have lost their faith after what happened to Sue. The old plan to have the biosynthetic serpent eat the biosynthetic tree to make a super weapon necro serpent isn't what they had in mind. The fruit did seem like it was geared towards number 7 specifically, but I'm still a little bit worried about Vita eating it. They did confirm in the official podcast that this was all part of an elaborate plan because the entity lives in the core of the planet, and it isn't able to affect the people or contact them when they're in the tropical zone because of the EMF. We've been able to put most of that together, but they did make it plain, and I didn't hear that until I was already working on this, so I think I'll do another video where I talk about theories for the end of the season before the finale comes out. I think that's a good place to leave things. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking after a pretty wild episode. There's just one more to go. How do you think it will end? Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.